Welcome to another edition of the Pucks With Haggs podcast, powered by PrizePicks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. I believe this is the 96th episode of the Pucks With Haggs podcast with my longtime friend and colleague, Mick Colageo. Mick, please tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
Okay, I have a blog called Rink Wrap, which is mainly used for home game live blogging of Boston Bruins games. I also contribute weekly Sunday columns to BostonHockeyNow.com and seasonal issues, the big issues of the hockey news. I do the Bruins article, and I'm here at Pucks With Haggs, and I also appear weekly with Pete Shepard on his radio show.
There you go. Always happy to have Mick with us. Let's also thank our sponsors. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. You just pick more or less than on two or more player stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. This is a fantastic daily fantasy sports venture right now, obviously, with the NBA Finals, Stanley Cup Final, Major League Baseball going. There's all kinds of good stuff going on. There's always action on PrizePicks, and this is the perfect time to try out something new as basketball is winding down. Make sure to try out esports this month because every Wednesday and Saturday in June, if your lineup doesn't win, you'll get your entry fee back. Choose from Counter-Strike 2, Call of Duty, League of Legends, and so much more. I'm sure I'll know what all that stuff is as my son gets a little bit older in the next couple of years to actually start playing those games, Mick. League of Legends sounds pretty awesome. No idea what that is, but I'm sure
you should have Court Lalonde on here, and he could tell you about everything, I bet.
I'm sure he could. All right, let's also thank GameTime. GameTime.co. Download the app, though. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with GameTime, and you're going to want those NBA Finals tickets with the Boston Celtics playing the Dallas Mavericks. That should be an awesome series. You're going to want front court, like courtside seats, front and personal. Be able to bark at Kyrie Irving when he's out there in the ice. Maybe you can try to get him to flip the bird to you too by getting your by getting your tickets at GameTime.
That'd be great.
It would be. It really would. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Let's also circle back to PrizePicks and tell you to download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right. We have taken care of the sponsors. We have given them their love, Mick. Let us move on to the Boston Bruins. Obviously not playing right now. Not a lot happening right now. But the one interesting nugget for this week is, again, Linus Ullmark and the potential trade of Linus Ullmark. We have the New Jersey Devils, Tom Fitzgerald, on Monday basically saying we're willing to give up our first-round pick, our top 10 pick, for a goaltender. And they need goaltending badly. And if you look at their save percentage, if you look at the goals allowed last year, obviously – defense and goaltending was a serious weak spot for the New Jersey Devils. They've identified that as somewhere where they need to upgrade. The Akira Schmids and Vitek Vanaceks of the world clearly didn't get the job done in New Jersey. And you know what's interesting, Mick, is I do remember when we asked Don Sweeney at the end of season press conference about the goaltending values around the league and whether goaltending values were down. When he started referencing something, he did talk about a first-round pick and potentially there was some kind of reference to a first-round pick as the return when you're trading a goalie as some kind of possibility. Interesting that he mentioned that then, and now we're hearing about Tom Fitzgerald saying that the first-round pick is in play for a goaltender. We know that the New Jersey Devils and the Bruins have made trades before. Eric Haula, Pavel Zacha just a couple of years ago. So clearly Fitzgerald and Sweeney have done business together before. And frankly, I think this one makes more sense to me than the Martin Necas Linus Ullmark, because I think that's too much for Carolina to give up for Linus Ullmark, to be honest with you. But what you make of the the New Jersey Devils as a potential landing spot for Linus Ullmark?
If we are to believe this report that he has issued a apparently revised a destination list of approved destinations numbering 10, maybe something like that, to the Bruins management, then New Jersey makes a lot of sense. Now, as far as the Bruins' interest in keeping Ullmark in the conference, I think that in order for them to not restrict the value through hypothetical circumstances, they should be open to trading him. Even within the division, I would be open.
Or the conference. Yeah.
Right. In this case, it's the conference, but I would be open even as far as the division if I were them, if I thought I was getting the best offer, because at the end of the day, you are your team is going to determine where you land, not one player on another team. And if it's that close, then you didn't do your job with what you have to work with this summer. So in my mind, they should be wide open to whatever, wherever Linus wants to go, and then take the best trade they can get. And to me, if you can get in the top 10 in this draft class, in any draft class, that's not the direction I was thinking, warm bodies, but I think the Bruins desperately need to recover a chance to get in the first round, the top 10. To me, that's huge, and I would do it.
Yeah, and also it's a means to an end potentially too, right, Mick? They could keep the pick and make the pick, which would be good because they have not had many first-round picks lately because they've been sort of all in, and they traded a bevy of them a couple of years ago. But it also could help your trade package if there's another player out there that you want and there's somebody that you desire where it's going to take a first round pick and more to get that player in return. So maybe it turns into sort of you get that to use that as ammunition to get somebody else too. It could be either or, but I think either way, if you get a fairly significant high first round pick for Linus Ullmark, either you're going to get a really good young player or you're going to have a big trade chip that might allow you to get something else.
Yeah, it's good for a number of reasons. You're right. I would hate the idea of them acquiring that pick and then not making it, because I just feel like, and I do believe very strongly that Don Sweeney would not take that and turn around to throw it somewhere unless it was a very young player who's going to be with them for a long time with team control.
For sure.
That because I do feel like he has already proven, and he'll prove again as long as he's the GM of the Bruins, that he cares more about the franchise than he does about his job. And it always annoyed me anytime I'd see speculation on social media that Sweeney might do this, he might do that because it's bad for him if this happens. He's never been about that. Dave, you can check the records and look at the body of work. He has always tried to serve both masters, the future of the franchise, the needs of the team in the present. And as we know in the NHL draft, you're generally not drafting for a position. You're drafting the best player available, especially after you get past those first few lottery picks. That you're looking at, you 10 deep, you're going to get what you think is going to be the best NHLer out of that bunch. And then unless a team comes to you and says, hey, if you take this player with that pick, we will give you this player in a trade. Now, those kinds of, is the one way I could see it becoming anything less than the best player available.
Yeah, yes, totally. And I agree with you. I mean, Cam Neely and Don Sweeney certainly view themselves as, caretakers for the Boston Bruins franchise. I don't think they've ever viewed it as anything different. That's why you put people like that in those positions, because they're about not only the present, but the future and, continuing the sort of original six mystique and pageantry and history and everything that goes along with being one of those franchises in the NHL. There's no doubt about it.
They have to be a legacy steward of something greater than themselves.
Yes, big time stewards. There's no question about it. So yeah, I agree with you, and I think they're not going to make a deal unless it makes sense. And I it almost goes without saying that I think the only way they would trade for a first round pick and then trade a first round pick away is if it was a very young, high ceiling player that they coveted, that they thought could come here and be like the next number one center for the next 10 years or something
right.
like that, or
Noah Hannafin, which we now know is off the table.
Right. Or be a, or be
that was a live wire.
Yeah, or be a defenseman that you could add to their mix that would be like sort of a game changer. And even Hannafin's getting to the age where I don't know if I'd be willing to give up a first round pick for him. And also because I think he's good, he's not great. You know what I mean? Like, I think they like him a lot.
He's very good at a lot of things. He's not bad at anything. And that's the thing I think I like the most about him is he plays the game at a high level in all facets. And that's
we have guys like that on the back end.
That's hard to find.
It's huge. Absolutely. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. The way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players, you just pick more or less than on 2 or more player stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. With PrizePicks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. Whether it's playoff basketball, whether it's Major League Baseball, soon enough, football will be here in the fall. But you can make a PrizePicks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're totally locked in. If you're looking for promotions, PrizePicks has got you covered every week, from lowering select player stats projections on Tuesdays, which increases your chances of getting a win, to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's download the PrizePicks app today. Super easy to use, easy to download. And use the code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. But it'll be interesting to see how all of that plays out. I do think, and we've talked about this a number of times, that I do think eventually Linus is going to agree to a deal somewhere, because I think the writing is on the wall. And, I think he understands that it's in his best interests to go somewhere where he can play a lot, play well, earn a next contract, set up somewhere for the next 4 or 5 years and get that one remaining big deal he's probably going to get in his career, where a few years from now, he's not going to get that anymore.
Well, not only because of age, because you don't want to put more than one season between yourself and that Vezina trophy.
Right.
You were in that sucker. The GMs voted on it. You were it. And to me, knock it out of the park, buddy. So, I mean, it's there's no time like the present. The iron is hot, strike. And it helps the Bruins too.
Yeah, and either Carolina or New Jersey would be a good landing spot for him. Like, I think they're going to do right by him. I think they appreciate everything he did for them. They're not going to send him to Siberia. I think they want to send him somewhere where he's going to be happy, where he's going to want to go, where it's going to be a good team, where he's going to be set up in a good situation. And I do think, Mick, you're right. I don't think they feel about him like they're afraid to have him in the same conference or division, afraid to see him in the playoffs down the line, afraid it's going to really bite them.
Carolina could make it punitive, but at the end of the day, you got to build your team. And I think that in a 32-team league, you can't be preoccupied with you can't sacrifice your own best opportunities in order to avoid a potential matchup in the playoffs.
Yeah, most definitely. Also, this week, there were reports out there. I think I saw it in the fourth period, Dave Pagnotta's Twitter account, that Danton Heinen and the Bruins are talking contract extension, or something's going on there. And I think that, and I think we've talked about this too, Mick, before, that makes all the sense in the world. I think him on a 2-3 year deal for low money makes a ton of sense, for a few $1 million, like $2-3 million, something like that. He's a guy that played top line, top six, wing, a good deal this year. Was really good with Pastrnak for a long stretch. And can play third line, can play first line. I think has become a much more complete 200-foot player. Oh, yeah. Is much more assertive offensively, is so versatile and can play different wings and do different things that, that's the kind of player that you're going to get great value for if you sign him to a 2 or 3 year deal for fairly short money because of all the things he can do.
He could have helped win some of those 50-50s on the sidewalls against Florida. I felt like his game had really come around in that regard.
Yeah, if he wasn't hurt.
Exactly. If they weren't missing him, that would have been a better lineup. And he certainly rewarded the Bruins for taking a chance on him. And it was really, it's only natural that they carry it forward. He can go to market. And so I think the Bruins have to be fair and know that they're not going to get him at a price that they dictate like they did last year. Let's see what happens here. If I'm him, I'm thinking this is my last big contract. So in as much as he's made enough money in his career to care more about the fit, and that's what he said on the exit day, he cares much more about the fit, and he loves being with the Bruins. It would make sense to me that he stays, that they work out something middling so that they can pay him commensurately but they're going to have to be conservative if they want to do any big fish.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the only sort of caveat I have about sort of dealing with the Danton Heinens of the world right now as far as contract extensions go, is I'm always of the opinion that you take care of the biggest stuff first, and then put it this way. If they had a meeting with Danton Heinen's people, or they reached out to Danton Heinen's agent and said, hey, we just want to reach out before free agency, let you know there's interest here. We'd like to have him back. We'll figure something out. And if it was something like that, great. But I would want to see them focused on signing Jeremy Swayman, getting cost certainty for that player, figuring out that deal, and then all this other stuff, all these other dominoes will fall after the fact. Because I think you need to have cost certainty on that contract before you hit July 1st, so you know how much money you have to spend on the bigger free agents. You know how much money you're going to have for these other, sort of backfill players, the role-playing sort of guys on your roster. And I think so much of that depends, A, on Jeremy Swayman signing an extension, and B, on trading Linus Ullmark and freeing up that extra additional cap space. So I really feel like you've got to do those two things, and those should be the biggest things on your priority list before you start getting down to Danton Heinen, even Jake DeBrusk. I think that's something you could let get closer to July 1st, assuming he's going to go somewhere else.
There's nothing that's been said there that doesn't scream at me he's going to market.
Right.
And he goes to market, the Bruins going to say, we felt like we made a fair offer. Good for Jake. Jake's getting what he wants. I hope it works out for him. We have to move on. We liked him. I just feel like I could write the speech right now. I feel like we've already heard this kind of situation. But yeah, you're right. The big domino has to fall. And just like they are 1A, 1 and 1A in the net, this will be 1 and 1A on Sweeney's desk. And I think that the Heinen thing.
And you need to have that signaled, Mick, to the player too, right? I think it's time for the Bruins to signal to Jeremy Swayman that you are a number one priority for us. You are our number one goalie. You are one of the most important players that we have in the entire organization. And we're going to show you the love, show you the value, and show how important you are by making sure you're taken care of before we deal with all this other stuff, especially on the heels of the arbitration stuff last year. And yeah, I know Don Sweeney says it was the player that filed for arbitration. I think that's such a semantic thing to do in that particular situation, is to say something like that and to do something like that. And I didn't think that was necessary. But I think the time is now to show Jeremy Swayman the love contractually and show him how important he is based on the way that he played, because he was the most important guy down the stretch when it mattered in the playoffs. And he was, along with Ullmark, the two most important guys they had during the regular season. I totally agree, Mick.
And the Heinen thing might sneak in ahead of that just because of the logistics of keeping him away from the market. Yeah. So yeah, getting taken care of business that you're already going to do, and you already have a wink agreement. If you've already come up with a number and you're just a matter of hammering out details, I can see that getting ahead. But you're right, nothing else is going to get ahead of this. The goaltending situation drives the bus. It
does, and Swayman does. There's a reason Paul Maurice was telling him that was one of the best goalie performances I've ever seen in the handshake line at the end of the series. Because he knows how good, he knows that was the single biggest reason it even got to 6 games. The Bruins were 12th in the NHL in offense during the playoffs. It was all about the goaltending and
Yeah.
Swayman and how well he played.
Right. It wasn't just finishing. It was the game was in their end the whole time.
100%. And like it's so rare now to find like that player who you think project is going to eventually be able to play 55 to 60 games and is nails in the playoffs, like as a goalie.
They tried to break him, and they tried to distract him. They tried to run him. They tried to, and I think that's what Maurice was speaking to as much as anything statistical.
Yep. I agree. Are you excited for the NBA Finals with the Boston Celtics? You should be. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, all kinds of stars. How cool would it be to actually go to one of the games at TD Garden and watch the Celtics? My friends, we've got an option for you. GameTime will help you get those tickets. GameTime makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the GameTime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. You pick out any specific games or matchups that you love to attend, and you get good deals for those tickets. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. The all-in pricing feature shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at the checkout. And don't you hate the surprise fees? Props to GameTime for no surprise fees. All right, so take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download the GameTime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Mick. We are down to the nitty gritty of the NHL now, the playoffs. We're down to two teams.
And then we're
down to the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers.
And at this juncture, I will credit you for astutely distinguishing the difference between the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup Final, which when I was a little child and didn't realize this, and this is something my father, who is not a hockey guy, told me, don't they just call it the Stanley Cup when there's just two teams left? I'm like, huh? And I looked it up. It's true. That's what they call it. This is the Stanley Cup. And traditionally speaking, this series is known as the Stanley Cup. And the one reason I like that is because I hate it when people say so-and-so won this many Stanley Cups.
Yeah.
I'm well versed on the history of the Stanley Cup. Nobody needs to tell me how the trophy has evolved and how many there are and all that. And I know when it happened, how it happened, yada, yada. That having been said, to me, there's only a handful of players who have won Stanley Cups. That's a bunch of Montreal Canadiens who won it in 68, 69, and then again in 1971 after they replaced the bowl in the neck. Mm-hmm. And the Bruins, 69, 70, the Bobby Orr flying through the air Bruins, that Johnny Busick carries off the ice, is the first team awarded the Stanley Cup that's presented today with its ever-evolving barrel, and that preceded that change, and so to say that this series is the Stanley, you say you won Stanley Cups, good, because it stands for the final series, and is the most accurate application you can say to Stanley Cups plural in terms of a player winning them in this modern era is because it actually means the final series, championship.
Absolutely, yes, I agree, and I I think people could say that that's like a little nitpicking, but I think that's just historically accurate. And that's just, that's respecting the playoffs, respecting the cup, respecting the history, all that stuff, which we know
it's just as easy to get it right as it is to get it wrong. So why not talk about get it right?
Which we know that you do, Mick. You respect it all. Any thoughts on how we got here and what you expect to see between these two teams? Like, I think, it was interesting. I last week, I don't know if you were on, but somebody had sent a tweet out basically saying it was a conspiracy theory, or that it was, he thought it was going to be the Rangers Stars because it's NHL's worst nightmare to have the Florida Panthers and the Oilers in the finals, which I completely disagree with.
That would have been Carolina, Nashville if we were doing that.
No, Connor McDavid, your most marketable, best player, your flashiest player, your most jaw-droppingly skilled player, having him on the biggest stage is a good thing for the league. It's a good thing for him. It's a good thing for the league.
It's like when Mario made it.
Yeah, it's exactly when it should have happened. Like, he's at the height of his powers right now. Like, so all that stuff, is definitely good. And I also think the Florida Panthers, like, they play such an exciting style. It's a throwback. That's the heavy forechecking, physical nastiness, like the way that they play.
You appreciate it. Some people hate it.
Oh, I love it.
Because some people don't consider it aesthetic. Well, you're a hockey coach. Some people don't consider it aesthetically pleasing enough. They prefer. It's a little like when the Red Wings in '95 played the Devils at the end of that shortened '95 season. But
they're not boring. You know what I mean? Like the Devils, you could say were trap happy, like whatever, like,
Well,
the Panthers are exciting to watch.
That was actually a misnomer. The Devils forechecked. What they just refused to do is chase a puck they knew they weren't going to get. But they played a 1-2-2 and they shifted it laterally to challenge the breakout team to throw a risky pass cross ice. And they were the monkey wrench team in that playoffs because they made other teams go into special meetings to change their game to decide how to break out against that forecheck. In today's game, without the, where you allow the 2-line pass, so you don't have the same kind of 1-2-2 moving like a boat. It's not all unified like a constellation moving across the sky. And now it's more flexible. You got to have at least one side has to have like an elastic gap so that you can't gap up both defensemen at the same time. You have to have a safety valve, and you peel off more. It's like Doug McLean's Florida forecheck in 96 when they made it in the third year. That team was sort of ahead of its time because they forechecked more like the 2011 Bruins did under the new rules, where Bergeron would come swooping in and take an angle to sort of influence the breakout to take a certain side of the ice. And then the F2 would come in and angle a certain way. And then the third guy would come in and hit intercept. So they would have it's much more complicated and dynamic now, and it has to change right on the spot. But it's fun to watch Florida forecheck. I agree with you. Their heavy game is reminiscent of the 2011 through 14 Bruins, and I enjoy watching physical hockey prevail. I don't know how I got so curmudgeonly over this, but
I think it's important. Not only do I enjoy it, I think it's important that those teams continue to get rewarded and have success, and it doesn't become a complete like finesse skill game where the physicality gets phased out and it no longer resembles the hockey that we know, from when we were younger. I think it's important to the game that teams like that are successful.
I don't want to see a sleepy 3-on-3 overtime where people are just trying to play keep away and nobody's ever going to attack.
No, definitely.
To me, 5-on-5, the best 5-on-5 team wins the Stanley Cup for a reason. And it's fun to watch a team that, now, classic situation here where you got generational talent on one side of the ice and you got a great hockey team on the other side. Am I dissing the Oilers here and not calling them a really good hockey team? I think they are a really good hockey team. And frankly, once Dallas started convincing me with their forwards, I thought their back end is so good. Once their forwards started convincing me, I thought that they were going to be the team coming out of the West, and I was wrong. And one of the things that I saw here is that Mike Haker, the longtime Dallas Morning News columnist on the Dallas Stars, he told me on dinner before a Bruins game during the season that Dallas did not aim to be a physical team. And I said, they don't seem that fast and not that physical, and their old guys are getting rickety. And I just didn't see what the pathway was for them. They were a lot better than I thought they'd be at the end, especially because of the young blood. But at the end of the day, Edmonton was the more physical team than they were. So I think Edmonton has players who want to play that game, who can play that game. But as a team, that's not how they play. So I think that it's really going to be fun watching to see what Maurice has in store for McDavid. What does he want to try to do with him? Does he want to just try to hold him to the outside? Is he going to hunt him down and try to throw bodies on him and see if he can distract him, or worse? This is really going to be a great matchup.
It will be. What I find interesting is he even going to really have to worry that much about McDavid? Like, of course, he's going to make some plays. There's no question about it. He's going to score some goals. But is he even going to have the puck enough in the offensive zone to be that much of a concern where you've got to formulate some kind of plan to neutralize him? I mean, when you watch the Edmonton Oilers defenseman core, like they're okay, but I don't think that's even the best defenseman core that the Florida Panthers have faced in this playoffs that have really brought them to their knees with the forecheck and the way that they play.
Yeah.
And I wonder if Edmonton's even going to have the puck enough in the O-zone for that even really to become like a serious problem that they've got to worry about.
Bouchard's going to have to play out of his mind. We know that Ekholm is a stalwart. We know that Nurse is a heavy player who
has struggled.
He struggled, but then he got it together at the end of the Dallas series. He really played well. So question is can Florida discombobulate him? And but Bouchard to me is the guy that they're going to soft dump and hit and see if they can get, because I feel like Edmonton depends very heavily on long Dennis Weidman type passes from Bouchard, because like Weidman, he's really talented and accurate when he has the puck. Without it, he's going to be tested.
Yep. And I agree. I just think, I think Connor McDavid will win a game or two in this series, like on his own, or he will have he and Draisaitl will factor heavily into Edmonton at least winning a game or two in this series. But I just think Florida is so much better team-wide and team-wise, and the way they're made up and the way that they're playing and the unfinished business of last year. I think they're highly motivated. There could be an element, Mick, of the Oilers being happy with getting to the Stanley Cup Final. You know what I mean? Satisfied on some level.
But I doubt it. I'll tell you one place I think the Oilers are going to do a better job matching up against the Panthers than anything they've seen in these playoffs is at the center position. Not only because of McDavid, but they can stack it, and they can do Draisaitl, they can do the Nuge, they can get deep if they want and be all world all the way down. And so Barkov and Bennett, primarily via Barkov's can go in beast mode as a puck possessing center, and Bennett, we know what he can do. He's a tractor pull, and so I think those matchups are the ones I'm going to be eyeballing first.
Yeah, I think so too. Per usual with these series. Also, I think Stuart Skinner's not that great in goal. Like, he's okay, but I think Edmonton has some weak spots and some things that can be exploited even more so than some of the other teams. Like, put it this way. I do not think the Oilers are the best team that the Florida Panthers are going to have faced in these playoffs. They might not even be the second best team that the Florida Panthers have faced in these playoffs. They might not even be the third best team that the Florida Panthers have faced in these playoffs, given who they had to beat in the Eastern Conference to get to where they are now. So, I do think there's going to be an element of Florida being ready for the moment, knowing what it takes to win the Cup Final after being there last year, being hungry to win because they were there last year and they came up short. Right. I think there's going to be a different level that Florida's at in this series.
They've done it all.
Might not be able
Trophy 2 years ago, Cup Final last year. It's kind of like now it's time for them to finish their job. This is their time. They should they should do exactly what you said.
Yeah, and I feel like there's Edmonton might be feel like they accomplished something getting there, and it'll be a good step for them for sure. But it's going to be interesting to watch because I'm just not I've seen Florida dominate too many good teams to think that anything.
And Edmonton, didn't they just set the record for fewest shots on net in a clinching game of a playoff series? Because that was against Dallas. Now Dallas has arguably the best defensive core in the league, but
they play a wide open game.
But their forwards, it's a mixed bag with them at forward, and they were able to hem in Edmonton to the point that it took just a couple of power play goals. Dallas couldn't finish, and Edmonton did a good job packing it in and not making it too hard on Skinner. So Skinner's a big goalie that Henrik Lundqvist said, if he gets overactive and he tries to do too much, he gets in trouble. But if he plays to his strengths, which is angling off of how his defense funnels the attack, I think that Edmonton's going to try to play sort of a collapse, a little bit like 80s Canadians, where you pack it all in around the goalie who tries to be big, and then you can then try to beat him, and if he's Petraglia, you're probably not going to beat him. So so this is, I think, what we're looking at from an Edmonton team defense standpoint. But Florida, they'll do what they do, and it'll be a lot of fun seeing how it goes. And if they have a hard time getting inside there, then you're going to see some real aggressive action, and then it's going to be fun because Edmonton doesn't take any crap.
No, that part will be fun. It'll be physical, and it'll be fun to watch. And the one thing is for sure, the Florida Panthers, I think, are going to be more physical with Connor McDavid than Dallas was at points. I mean, that goal that
Dallas is not a physical team by comparison.
That crazy goal that McDavid scored at the end there does not happen against Florida, because they would have been taking the body around the net and never would have allowed him to start pulling those stick moves that close to the net.
Yeah, well, Heiskanen made a bad.
He's swiping
they were killing the other guy, the forward there. But I really thought that Heiskanen just really made like a total guesswork on that play.
Yeah.
I was thinking, something I've seen.
He was swiping at the puck. He wasn't playing the body. He was just swiping at the puck, which is exactly what McDavid wanted him to do. Like, I
remember Butch Goring, who's getting long in a tooth by now, in 1983, splitting Ray Bourque and Brad Park and going straight in and scoring in Game 6 of their 83 conference final, which turned out to be the clinching game for the Oilers to win their final cup, to get back to the final and do that. And so great defensemen make bad decisions. And so McDavid is certainly a great and a generational talent. It'll be fun to see him playing hockey on this kind of stage.
Most definitely. All right, tweet of the week, Max Diesel RI. And this plays into what we were just talking about, Mick. If the NHL decides to protect McDavid in the Cup final, it might be Florida's kryptonite. And I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, he'll certainly get superstar treatment. I think he does to some level anyway. And he should, frankly. But like, I can't see the NHL not letting the Florida Panthers play their game and not let them play the way that they've played for the entire playoffs. And frankly, they've been one of the least penalized teams in the playoffs, despite how physical they play, which is kind of reminiscent of that 2019 St. Louis Blues team was super physical and didn't get called for a ton of penalties.
That's because they were there first. They were strong in their sticks. And same way Julian wanted the Bruins to be in his era with that team. Heavy teams win, even in the era that's supposed to be wide open because of the rules and the synthetic sticks and the flight of the puck and all of that. It's a fast game, but I do think that teams that are physical and are well-disciplined and well-coached and have the right athletes can still gum it up. And that's what a team like Florida does, and fully anticipate them taking advantage of the situation that they're in. The McDavid subplot of all of this is going to be very entertaining because we're watching the best offensive talent I've seen, probably since I saw Bobby Orr before his 1972 knee surgery. So, this is an exciting series, especially you get a boxer and a puncher.
It should be. It's going to be great. Let's thank our sponsors again real quick. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll right in. With PrizePicks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports. You can make a PrizePicks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're locked in. If you're looking for promotions, PrizePicks has got you covered every week, from lowering select player stats projections on Tuesdays, which increases your chances of getting a win, to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. There's always action on PrizePicks, and this is the perfect time to try out something new as basketball is winding down. Make sure to try out esports this month, because every Wednesday and Saturday in June, if your lineup doesn't win, you'll get your entry fee back. Choose from Counter-Strike 2, Call of Duty, League of Legends, and so much more. It's fun and pretty simple. It's free, fun, and pretty simple. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Let's also thank GameTime. With the NBA Finals going on right now, You get last-minute deals at GameTime. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Flash deals, zone deals. Easy to find and buy MLB tickets and for every other kind of event in your area, including the NBA Finals. Just use the app features listed and customize your spot and the supplemental as inspiration. Pick out any specific games or matchups that you'd love to attend. And the NBA Finals are where it's at right now. You can toggle the all-in pricing feature to show you the total up front with no surprise fees at the checkout. How nice is that? All right. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase.